In this week's parasha, Parashat Behukotai, we finish up the Sefer Vayikra, the book of Vayikra. We're closing it up, and we close it up with the beautiful start of Berachot, 13 blessings from God. Im Behukotai telechu. If we're going to keep God's commandments, then we're going to have beautiful, beautiful Berachot. But then, Chas v'shalom, if we mess up, we have some terrible, terrible curses, otherwise known as the Tochecha, as the rebuke. It's known as the small rebuke. In most Batei Knesset this week, when the Baal Kor gets up to this section in the Torah, he's going to read it in a lower voice. People are scared to get this aliyah. They give it to the Hazan or to the rabbi because it's a terrible rebuke at the end of the parasha. So the question is, why now? Why does the parasha end off with a rebuke? Chazal point out that twice in the Torah we find a rebuke. By us in this week's parasha, the small rebuke, and the big tochacha in Parsha Ki Tovo towards the end of Sefer Devarim. So the question why? Also another question, this whole Sefer Vayikra, it's interesting. We started off at the very beginning with the Mishkan, we built it at the end of Shemot, now the Shekhinah comes down, and the whole beginning of the Sefer talks about the Mishkan, the Korbanot, how it worked in there, and then all of a sudden it starts to make a switch over to Kashrut, to the Chagim, to Shemitah, and the lands of Eretz Yisrael, and ends off with the Brachot and the Klalot. So what's going on in the parasha? So I saw a beautiful Dvar Torah in the Sforno, a deep idea that makes you rethink what's really going on in the Torah and the way things are arranged. So if you go back to last week's parasha, or for those of you that are in America, this week's parasha, so in last week's parasha, Parashat Behar, the very first pasuk, it says that God spoke to Moshe at Har Sinai, and then Hashem teaches Moshe all the laws of Shemitah. So there's the famous Rashi that says, Ma'anyan Shemitah tzal Har Sinai. What's the connection between Shemitah and Har Sinai? Meaning, Rashi's asking, what's the connection? What's going on over here? We spoke about Har Sinai in the book of Shemot, so it's a whole book and a half ago. What are you talking about? Where did Har Sinai come from? And Rashi has this famous answer that it's coming to teach you that the details were taught at Har Sinai as well, and you can read the Rashi's approach. The Sforno has a very different approach, and says the Sforno on that pasuk, V'izkir Moshe Rabbeinu zot parasha bezeh hamakom ki chashav shikatzu techav la'aretz. So says the Sforno, why is Moshe and Har Sinai being spoken about right now, or in last week's parasha in Bahar at the very start? He says because Moshe thought that right now we're about to enter the land of Israel, and now B'yizira Shmitat Karka, and now he's warning them with the laws of Shemitah because we're about to enter the land of Israel, and it's time to learn the laws. Rabbi Khan, in one of his Divrei Torah in this week's parasha, he goes at length to say that originally we're supposed to enter the land of Israel right now. It's only in a couple weeks in the parasha, in the beginning of Bamidbar, we're going to sin with the spies, and everything's going to change over. We're going to be stuck for 40 years in the desert, and we're going to mess up, and that's going to change the plan. But really, right now, we're about to enter the land of Israel. So with this, you take this idea of the Sforno, and we can say, that really explains the book of Vayikra. In the middle of Shemot, we messed up. We sinned with the golden calf. So we had to start doing a big tikkun. So God said, build the Mishkan. And we did that all throughout the very end of Shemot. We start off the book of Vayikra, and we start off excited. We have the Beit HaMikdash, and now we have all the laws of how to bring the Korbanot, how to bring the Shekhinah down. And very early in the parasha, in Parashat Shmini, God does come down. We have the Shekhinah, we have the fire, we have the Kedusha. And from there, the parasha will go on to talk more about Korbanot, how to keep working with that Shekhinah. But then once that's through, the parasha is now going to switch and take a turn towards the Chagim, towards the land of Israel laws. Last week's parasha, Shemitah, Yovel. So we went from the idea of the sevens, of the Sphira, of the holidays. We fast forward over to the actual laws of Israel because we're about to enter the land of Israel. So if we're about to enter the land of Israel, so that's why this week's parasha, Behukotai, we're going to start off with the brachot, the blessings if we do everything right, and then we're going to end off with the klalot, with the tochacha, with the rebuke. Don't mess up. Sadly, though, we're going to mess up in the book of Bamidbar. History is going to change, and we're going to have to stay for 40 more years in the desert until eventually we get to the book of Devarim, and then all over again we're going to have another tochacha, another rebuke, right before we enter the land of Israel, actually. So really, the tochacha over here is not out of place at all, and all these laws of Eretz Yisrael are not out of place at all. Because as the Sforno said, Moshe was convinced that right now we're going to enter Tekef La'aretz. We're going to enter right away into the land of Israel. Sadly, that doesn't work out. So that's the pshat of the Sforno. But I heard another idea from this week's parasha if you read the Ramban on the parasha has a different idea that I think is also very deep. So says the Ramban. So the very start of the parasha speaks about all the different berachot, the 13 blessings we're going to get if we follow God's will. So when it comes to the beracha of Vishpati Chayara Amina Aretz, so early on in the parasha, Perek Vav, Pasuk Vav, the start of the second aliyah, so it says over there that Hashem is going to make the evil beasts, the wild animals, He's going to cease them from the land. They won't mess with us here in the land of Israel. We're going to be protected from the wild animals. Any that's been here in Israel, I live in Beit Shemesh over where we had some wild dogs about a year ago. Those were jackals used to howl in the night. So God says, once you do everything right, all these wild animals are going to be gone. So the Ramban on the Pasuk quotes two opinions from the Midrash. One opinion says that once everybody comes down, everyone's going to make aliyah, we're going to be filled with people, there's not going to be space for any wild animals, and that's going to be the bracha that's going to make it go away. That's the first opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. But then the Ramban quotes the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says that it's not that the animals are going to disappear. They're not going to cease to exist, but rather the evilness of the animals, the ra'ata chaya, that's going to disappear. Meaning that nature of the animals are going to change and they're going to become peaceful. So they're still going to be here, but they're going to be peaceful. Says the Ramban, Vehu nachon. That interpretation makes more sense. Ki tiyeh Eretz Yisrael be'et kiyum mitzvot kasher haya olam betchilato. Says the Ramban, because when we're going to keep the mitzvot, as we start the parasha, we're going to come to the land of Israel, we're going to keep the mitzvot, we're going to follow Hashem's Torah. So what's going to be? The land's going to go back to the way it was in the beginning. Kodem cheto shel Adam harishon, before the sin of Adam harishon. Ein chaya v'remes memita Adam. Before that first sin, no wild animal, no beast is gonna kill anybody. Kmo she'amru, ein arod memit, ela chet memit. As Chazal teach us in Gemara Berachot, that it's not the serpent that kills, but it's chet that kills. Meaning, the animals, the wild animals, would have no say over us. There'd be nothing that would stop us. We'd live in a total utopia with everybody. It'd be such a peaceful world. But the reason we don't have that, the reason why the snake kills, the reason why the animals became wild, is because we sinned. So what the Ramban is saying is a big chidush. This week's parasha, if we keep the Torah, we keep the mitzvot, we're going to go back to the way it was in the times of Adam HaRishon before he sinned. And if you fast forward a little bit further in the Berachot, so Hashem says in Pasuk Yud Bet, Perek Kava Pasuk Yud Bet, Hashem says, "V'talachti b'tochechem v'iti lachem Elohim v'atem tiyu li le'am." And Hashem says that if you keep all these things, the ultimate reward is going to be that Hashem says, "I'm going to walk with you." Actually, Rashi says beautifully, "Atayeli machem began Eden." I'm going to walk with you in Gan Eden as if I was one of you. This idea of God walking with us. So where do we find this concept of God walking with us? So it goes all the way back to Gan Eden. As it says over there in Gan Eden, after Adam and Chava sinned, it says, "Vayishme'u et kol Adonai Elohim mitalech bagan leruach hayom." This is back in Bereshit, Perek Gimel, Pasuk Chet, "Vayitchabeh Adam." And when God said, "I'm going to come walk with you in Gan Eden," He's actually going to join us. And then it says, "Vayitchabeh Adam ve'ishto." Adam and Chava, they hid mipnei Adonai Elohim betoch etz hagan. They hid from God amongst the trees because they were scared from Hashem. Why were they so scared? They were scared because they sinned. But before sin, you're not scared. You're going to walk with God. And you come back to the Ramban here as well. And the Ramban says it as well. Says the Ramban, "V'chen hitalachti b'tochechem." I'm going to walk amongst you. Remez lemida shikre'u rabotenu zal shchina. It's a remez to the shchina. And fast forward a little bit more in the Ramban. V'amru b'bereshit rabbah. Ikar shchina b'tachtonim hayta. The main part of the shchina was in the lower worlds, down below with us. V'inu uskar kan gan eden v'alam haba leyodav. And says the Ramban, there's a hint over here to Gan Eden and Olam Haba. For those who see it, it's actually interesting. The Art School English chooses not to even translate that part. They say it's too Kabbalistic. So we won't go that much further in the Ramban. But basically what the Ramban is saying is that God is saying if we keep the mitzvot, we can do it right, we're gonna turn the world back to the way it used to be, to make it like a Garden of Eden all over again. And that's the brachot of this week's parasha, if we follow things perfectly. So with that, we have a new interpretation of the whole order of Vayikra and what we've been doing. So we came to Matan Torah, we came to Har Sinai back in the middle of Shemot, but then we sinned with the golden calf. And we had to do a tikkun. We had to build a Mishkan. And the whole end of Shemot, we built the Mishkan, and the whole start of Vayikra, we worked on the Mishkan, we brought down the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we learned all the halachot of the Korbanot, and now we're ready to expand it. We expand it first through the kashrut, the food that we're going to eat, then we're going to expand it out off of that, the Kedusha, to the holidays, and then ultimately towards the halachot of the land of Israel, and trying to basically turn the whole world into the Garden of Eden. So that's the secret over here of the Ramban that's hidden in the parasha. That really, what does that have to do with Har Sinai? Because we're trying to get back to Har Sinai to when we heard the Torah, we went back to pre-sin, and we're really trying to get back to Adam HaRishon pre-chet, and that's all the berachot of Behukotai and where we're trying to get to. Shabbat Shalom.